everyone. It's the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour, Series 4. I'm your host, Jason Rutledge. If you're one of our many listeners tuning in from all over the globe, welcome back. If you're new here, well, welcome to the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour, your deep dive into movies, some known, some not so well known, what they mean to us now, what they meant to us then, the culture they reflect, and really the overall culture of movies in general. Over the next 7 episodes, we're going to be looking at a group of movies that span close to, let's say, 60 years of our collective movie history. And we're kicking off this series with the 1958 classic, The Blob. Nathan, Katie, and Joe are all back again to discuss all things gooey and blobby. So, time to start the show.
Hey, man, where you going?
Oh, crap, it's little Danny. What do you want, little Danny?
I won't tell anybody. I'll go with you.
No, that's fine. Please go away.
Aren't you afraid to go out by yourself?
No, it's fine.
I'm not afraid. I'll guard you.
Go away, little Danny.
Way with French gore, like not like current, but like genre Lin. It's like sloppy gore, where it's like they're just taking meat from the local supermarket and just. It's not like effects.
What is the movie where the woman had like sheep entrails in her mouth?
Oh, the Fulci? Are you talking about Gates of Hell?
It was a Yeah,
Probably.
Certain movies
that sounds
like
right.
That.
When you could still get away with that kind of crap. I don't think you can do that much anymore.
Legally, I don't think you can. Like
No.
Even if you get it from the butcher shop?
I don't think that there is a huge market for that anymore because and there's also people who I think it's more frowned upon. So I'm not saying people won't do it, but I think people are less apt to do it. The only thing, I have a friend who works in special effects, and his big thing is there are people who go to these training colleges for veterinarians, and then they'll buy their animals that way. But a lot of people who work in special effects won't work with people who do that because they don't agree with it.
Well, that's somebody's pet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they were possibly
too.
some other people's pets back then too when stuff was going on.
Like, I get it when there's, like, something like Day of the Dead where there's entrails. I get that. Mm-hmm.
Especially if they're eating a cow.
Yeah, but not everybody eats cows.
No, I'm saying that if the zombies are eating cows, it makes sense, like, just use a fucking go find a dead cow on the highway.
Well, then let's begin. Our world as we know it exists under constant supernatural threat. At the time of this recording, that threat is usually zombies. Sometimes it's vampires, sometimes it's a plague that for whatever reason only Vincent Price is immune to, and sometimes it's the Earth itself that is coming to get us. Sometimes the Earth, like a Lovecraftian old god reasserting its authority over us, lets loose something from deep within. Example. In the 1901 novel by M.P. Shiel called The Purple Cloud, the narrator, last man left on Earth, has traveled to the North Pole and discovered the origin point of the cloud, the purple terror with no shape that wiped out humanity. Quoting, "The lake, I think, would be something like a mile wide, and in its middle is a pillar of ice, low and thick. I had the impression, or dream, or fantasy, that there is a name inscribed round in the ice of the pillar, in characters that could never be read, and under the name a lengthy date. And the liquid of the lake seemed to be wheeling with a shivering ecstasy, splashing and fluttering around the pillar from west to east with the planet's spin. And it was borne upon me, can't say how, that this fluid was the substance of a living being." Not long after that, the Fritz Leiber short story The Black Gondolier presented a possibly sentient mass of oil that lured people to their death. After that, we had the movie classic X the Unknown that showed us a radioactive mass of oozing mud that bubbled up from deep within the earth to threaten all of Scotland. But there is one case, pretty famous one, where the gooey, oozy, creeping, leaping threat didn't come from the earth at all, but from out there somewhere, from a place in space where all the small towns and reckless teenagers had already been eaten, leaving it hungry for more. And unlike most of the old gods, it came with a name everyone could easily pronounce. The Blob. Welcome everyone back to the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour. How are we doing? The Blob 1958, and then remade again in 1988 or 87, was it? I don't
88.
remember. The 1958 The Blob was not the first movie of its kind. It wasn't the last one either, but it's pretty rare to see this kind of movie. There aren't many of them out there, depending on how you look at it. I mean, The Blob is somewhat unique. There are movies like it. I would think of both X the Unknown, which you mentioned, Kal-Tiki, the Immortal Monster, which came about a year later, I think. Mario Bava directed that one, or partially directed it. Features a giant pile of tripe, I think it was, or some sort of... I don't know what... I've heard it was tripe. It might have been something... Yeah, something like that. If you want to take this terror with no shape and sort of dissolve its boundaries away, you could throw in the fog, or the mist, perhaps.
Not the mist.
No, the mist were actual things.
There was a mist in the movie, though, right?
There was a mist in my eye that I paid to see it.
The Blob didn't have creatures inside of it.
I'd seen the Blob loads and loads and loads of times. Katie, I think you said this is the first time you've seen the Blob.
This one.
Joe, I think you hadn't seen the Blob, or the original Blob anyway, either.
Right, yeah.
What did you think? Product of its time, definitely.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
100%. When did they stop doing all the credits at the beginning of the movie?
I think it was a slow process. I don't remember exactly if there was any. I don't think there was any particular dividing line.
You mean like an opening scene?
No, like this one where we had the Globs singing their catchy ditty. And I read that it was only one Glob recorded 5 times.
Could have been.
Bacharach.
But just that's completely out of place pop song at the beginning of this movie.
I felt like it fit.
With a really cool animation effect. I like that.
Yeah.
The theme for the Blob, while it's not the greatest, the green slime to me, my personal favorite.
Oh, there you go. That Richard J. Cole.
Yeah, the single for the Blob theme song was released in Los Angeles, I think, and was a top 40 hit for a little while.
It pretty much was like it put Bacharach on the map, like incidentally almost. And
such a bad song.
Erwin Yeworth, the director, had already, he said in the commentary track that Ralph Carmichael, who's the composer, already had a beautiful piece of music for the opening credits. And I think it was whenever Jack H. Harris sold it to Paramount that they insisted upon getting some kind of teen boppy kind of.
I like it.
Theme. Yeah, it's great, but it doesn't really fit.
It doesn't.
I think it does and it doesn't. Like, I think had it gone the other way, we would have been like, oh, this works. But I feel like this works as well.
It doesn't necessarily. It doesn't necessarily present you with a whole lot of useful information about how to deal with a blob-based crisis. We get some information about his basic behaviors. The leaping part, I'm kind of iffy on.
We basically get the Addams Family theme. I mean,
yeah, more or less. That's a fair comparison. Yeah. But it doesn't really set the tone for the rest of the movie necessarily.
Especially as soon as the first scene opens and you get that beautiful, very appropriate orchestral score.
Right.
It's very jarring. It's like watching one thing and then going, I'm going to change the channel and go into another thing. It's just, they don't go together.
I wonder if I think it suits it now, looking back on cinema in that time, because I feel like it fits very much into them going to the midnight horror movie. Like, it fits a vibe that I think in hindsight we see, but maybe back then when it originally came out, we didn't have that.
Like, it fits an overall like
image of it,
aesthetic of these kind of movies.
Right.
Sure.
And like even like just the midnight movie sequence, that wasn't really too much of a thing cinematically at that point. It was like
But the way we view that now, it's like, oh, that was what they did. You know, it's more it's almost like a trope now, where back then it was, like you said, maybe not even necessarily super known even then.
Well, just to give you a bit of context, 1958 was a pretty good year for the genre. Also in theaters, or with around the same time as The Blob, you had Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, The Crawling Eye, Christopher Lee as Dracula. I think it might have been if not the first time, the second.
No, it was the first.
The Fly and Return of the Fly, both in the same year. Revenge of Frankenstein, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, War of the Colossal Beast, and How to Make a Monster. Pretty decent year.
How to Make a Monster was later, though.
A little bit.
Because 58 was I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. And 57 was I Was a Teenage Werewolf. And then they got to How to Make a Monster. But anyway. But you forgot to mention the one movie that it was double billed with, which was I Married a Monster from Outer Space.
Very specific title. I Married a Monster, oh, by the way, from outer space. So, suck it.
Yes. Well, you know, it was Paramount, so they're like, well, you can't marry a universal monster. So,
no.
Our monster's different than your monsters.
There you go.
Like, I married a monster who I have science class with, or I married a monster from down over there.
I want to see that one. I married a monster that I have science class with.
I married a monster and I got this black eye from playing basketball.
I married a monster and all I got was this shitty t-shirt.
I married a monster.
Or if we could hear from Charlize Theron's husband, you know, I married a monster from Monster.
Oh my goodness.
There we go. I was like, where's this going?
And what if they married a guy who was in the movie Manster, and then you could call it I Married Monster from Manster?
Manster Mash?
Hey, mark this to edit.
Manster Mash. I want to see Manster Mash.
Mark this as a cut, Jason.
You know, every time you say that, it's in the episode of you saying, please cut this.
Yep. And he even leaves it in.
Is that
what he does cut out? When he says, please don't touch this. No?
Is that what the M in MC Hammer stands for? Is monster?
Maybe. And what's the C stand for?
Cookie.
Monster Cookie Hammer.
We'll go with that.
Like the ones with the M&Ms in them, those?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I got you.
Okay. Anyway, like he was saying, cut this.
Yeah.
It took a turn.
Irvin S. Yeaworth did not direct, as far as I can tell, a lot of movies. 4D Man, Dinosaurus, and I think there's one called The Flaming Teenage.
Yeah.
That's
He
it.
lived longer
That's
than the two leads.
He did that before.
Not Teenager.
And then 4D Man was right after this. And I think they were going to try to get Steve McQueen for Dinosaurus as the lead, but of course he was like, I'd rather do Magnificent Seven.
Good call.
I don't know why.
What a dummy.
Fairly responsible call.
Kind of silly.
Classic Steve McQueen boner.
I know, right?
Dinosaurus.
What could Dinosaurus have been had Steve McQueen signed on? We'll never know. Wasn't somebody else in this movie also in Dinosaurus? Or no, it was one of the writers, I think, also worked on Dinosaurus. I don't think anybody from this movie was in Dinosaurus.
No, it was the same team that did it. So like Jack H. Harris produced that as well. And obviously trying to repeat their success. They also did 4D Man. It was like the same group each time would do one. But,
they had Theodore Simonson, who is also a writer on 4D Man. His writing partner on this, Kay Lineker, also known as Kay Phillips, was more known as an actress. She was in such classics as Charlie Chan at Monte Carlo, Charlie Chan in Reno, Charlie Chan in Rio, Charlie Chan at Treasure Island, Charlie Chan's Murder Cruise, Men on Her Mind, Men of Texas, Glamour Boy, and Cadet Girl. In fact, surprisingly enough, between 1938 and 1945, this woman was in 57 movies, which is staggering to do in 7 years.
The original Nicolas Cage?
Get out of my head. I was about to say that exact same thing. Because he's like in 4 movies that came out this year.
He does like 5 movies every year.
Very much alike.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love
But
that,
it's
man.
different. Back then, she was like a contract player.
Mm-hmm.
This is like back taxes for Nicolas Cage. That's what that is.
Yeah, and will be for some time, more than likely.
It's been going
Probably
on for
the only
20
guy.
years.
What's your newest movie called? Alimony.
Remember the alimony?
Remember that?
Probably the only guy. The only guy in this movie who was in more stuff than anybody else was the old man, Olin Howard. This was his last movie, by the way, was The Blob. But he'd done, I think...
That's the senior Howard, isn't it? Isn't that the Howard boy's father?
No,
The
that's
father
Rance
Howard?
No.
Rance, yes, Rance. I knew it was like an old-timey name. I just didn't know.
That is a hell of a
Great
name.
name, too,
Rance
by
is
the
a
way.
hell of a
Rance.
name.
Is
Yeah,
it
it is.
R-A-N-C-E or R-A-N-T-Z? Oh.
Is it short for something like Rancelot or
Rancid.
Rancelot Ring.
His full name is
Rancid
Rancid,
Howard.
and he shortened it to Rance.
Rancid
No.
Howard.
Genius.
No, that's what he named his. That's what.
You got this.
You
can do it.
My head hurts. So
Jason, cut right here. Cut.
The movie Ransom that the guy that did, and his name is Rance, and he named it after his dad.
Oh my god!
Wow.
It's like Rance Howard gets kidnapped, and Ron Howard's directing.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of
Ron Howard. That's his name.
Oh, I didn't realize you were looking for a name.
I was looking for Little Ronnie.
Little Ronnie.
He was trying to do
Howard.
Dangerfield. What's in a name?
Little Opie Cunningham.
What about McQueen being in this as his first lead role in a picture? The previous Saturday was the first episode of Wanted Dead or Alive premiered.
Wow.
So he, within a week.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Saturday and then Friday, The Blob.
And he was one of the few people in the movie that could act.
Hey, wait.
No.
No, that little kid, the brother, really major accolade. No, it's being sarcastic.
Yeah, we're not going to vouch for that kid.
We're not talking about little Danny. We're not going to talk about little Danny at all. I will say this, that
or Danny Thomas.
When they did the remake, that was one of the upgrades, was the little brother character that they made, for sure.
I was just really hoping he was going to get eaten by that blob. I was like, this will turn the movie around for me if he had gotten eaten.
He came running out there with the little cowboy hat and the pajamas and shooting a pop gun. I'm like, do it. But no, he somehow survived. So, whatever.
I bet if the blob had like puppies or some ice cream, he could have got him.
The dog didn't die, did it?
No, I don't think so.
No, the dog was smarter than that kid.
Well, most everything was smarter than that kid.
Damn.
That kid, the whole time that kid was on screen, I was just like, oh my god. Like, just go away.
That was like,
I hate you because of your age.
What is it, Nathan?
That was a thing back then. It was like that they thought they would get compassion from the audience for like.
Well, that's how I knew he wasn't gonna die. Like,
they already had a dog.
True. But they're kind of both.
Which one I'd like less.
Yeah, they're both thrown in there, and you think both might be perishable, but they're not. So you never know.
Might be perishable.
So who's worse, that kid or I can't remember his name? Franklin
Howard
from Texas Chainsaw.
Oh,
Franklin from what?
You know what? Franklin's entertaining.
From Chainsaw.
Franklin is so entertaining. The whole.
Yeah, the kid does that
for no reason.
You're right. Okay, yeah.
And the whole
Franklin, you could laugh at his dumbass.
That whole thing. Yeah.
God, I hate Franklin.
Before you guys got here, I was talking to Katie, and she mentioned that, and I agree that you can't really discuss this Blob without talking about the remake. You can't do one without the other, really.
Unless you're talking about it back in 1958.
And then before the remake,
if you time travel,
yes, I suppose that's correct.
Or 1983.
And let's not act like there's not a sequel. Also, Jason, come on.
There is not a sequel. There is something.
There is a sequel. There's a sequel.
Nathan,
right
it is
here.
Unwatchable.
I watch it all the time. What are you talking about?
When I say unwatchable, it's because half of it isn't even in focus. You can't tell what's happening. It's unwatchable. Yes.
It looks amazing on Blu-ray.
Yes. Oh, God.
Oh, yay.
If you can introduce the fifth person, that alarm out there, so that it will stop that,
we're not.
Then maybe we can.
The alarm and I are not on speaking terms, so I'm not going to do that.
Is this an isolated incident, or does this happen often?
This does not happen often, no.
Okay.
I think it does.
I feel like it does by the look on its face.
He's like, motherfucker, you called it.
So there are some things that the remake did better, and there's some things I think it did worse. Have all of you seen the remake, the '88 remake?
It's been a long time, but yeah I've seen that one a few times.
So how do you feel like those two things compare to each other? They're very different movies in a way, and they're very similar in many ways.
I wish that Steve McQueen was on a motorbike.
Well, he was dead, so there was that.
I wish the original had Shawnee Smith.
I mean, like in the original.
That's a good call. Like, was that an inspiration on The Great Escape? Is that why they made Kevin Dillon ride a motorcycle? Like, we would have liked to have seen that in the original Blob.
No, Kevin Dillon said that he wouldn't sign on unless he could be on the motorcycle.
And wear hair extensions.
He was like,
because
Kevin Dillon is really being facetious.
Kevin Dillon is rocking the jacket, the Albert Finney from Wolf and Hare. It's all there.
You and the fucking Wolf and Hare.
That's gonna be a T-shirt right
I haven't
there.
talked about it in 2 years.
You and the fucking Wolf and Hare.
That is pretty great.
How much you talked about that Harry in that episode.
A picture of the wig and then fucking wolf and wig or fucking wolf and hair, whatever the quote is there with the wig. That's great.
That's his dream sequel to Wolfen. Fucking Wolf and Hair.
And
it's a musical. So it's like hair.
As long as there's a first person werewolf transformation scene again, I'm good. I'm in.
Just don't look down.
It's a musical in Wolfen vision. Yeah.
Okay. So like the original, the remake.
Where's the train track?
I'm so glad I'm not the troublemaker this time.
Parts where they're similar in that they all take place on a single night, almost in real time, I think. We're pretty close to it.
Feels like it, yeah.
We have a lot of the same characters, sort of. I'm not sure I really like the super aggressive Blob that they put in.
I thought you were going to say blonde.
No, I could.
I liked it.
Aggro Blob?
Mm-hmm.
It's
I was
different.
down with the aggro Blob.
You could feel like if Carpenter hadn't done The Thing, they would not have maybe done this with the Blob.
Yeah. I think I like it, but I think they accelerate it too much. Like it's already too, like, deadly, like immediately, like
menacing.
Whereas in the original, it takes its time and it builds itself up.
Yeah, sort of keep building and building.
It acclimates to being on a new world.
There
you go. It's a good call. Yeah, like the phone booth sequence always stands out to me in the remake.
Mm-hmm. That looks great.
I love that scene.
It's great, but it's like very soon. It's like what, 20 minutes, 30 minutes into it, if at best.
It is kind of like what,
like that's something you'd feel like would come on to, halfway into the picture.
It's like a showpiece.
No, that
it's like
shot looked really good. There were some comp shots that didn't work as well. A lot of it was practical. I know. I think there's only one CGI shot in the remake, and it was of the little blob crystals at the end.
Do love practical effects.
The original Blob was made out of silicone. This Blob for the remake was made out of some kind of cloth and
I have a question.
Mucilage, or I don't know what the hell they threw in that thing. Some food
coloring. In the original one, was there a lot of like forced perspective shots? Because I feel like it was a tiny blob, but the way they shot it made it look bigger.
A lot of the shots of the theater
were
models. Yeah.
Yeah.
The old man's cabin was a miniature shot in, I think, 3/4 scale to make it look bigger in the background. Things like that.
Okay.
They threw those tricks at it, sure.
I love the one shot that showed the building, and then they made the either it was I don't know, it was like a miniature, but there was just that one like couple of frames of just a jolt from the real thing to the miniature, I guess, the miniature, like the whatever it is. They had the real thing, and they had the miniature. Whenever they interlaced the shots, there was barely any noticeability there, and then it has the ooze coming out. And I thought it was really cool, but I will shut up.
No, I agree with you in this fact that a lot of this stuff looks, especially for its time, it's all done really well.
Especially whenever he's
like
on,
the one that
like,
sticks
on
out
his
for,
arm.
Oh yeah,
the original Blob looks amazing.
The one that sticks out for me is when it's showing the projector room, and it's like coming out of the small windows of that. I really like that scene.
And then there was, I don't know, I guess was it animation whenever they shot the transformer on the power line, and then it fell onto the blob that was covering the building. That looked so fucking cool to me.
Yeah,
I love that.
That was an optical.
That would have been hand painted probably.
That's
the frame itself. Is most of the way that was done.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of matte paintings too.
There was one in particular that I remember. There was people in the foreground, and it was a painting, and it was very strange. I don't think I had ever seen that. And it was like with somebody so close to the camera to where you could tell like this is a painting. It was very strange. That was kind of jarring.
That's one thing I love about watching older films.
They didn't flop around.
Is seeing how they achieve some of that stuff. because you figure you didn't have all of the options. Like, I know we all don't love CG that much, but like they didn't even have that option then. So it was like, how can we make this work? And the fact that like I love miniature work, or like when there's stop motion stuff, and it's just, I don't know, it's awesome.
Particularly something like this.
Well, for the original Blob and the remake both, they had to kind of invent the process. 'cause
Yeah.
no one had done
I mean,
it.
you're writing it and you're going, fuck, how do we shoot this?
Well, it's the same problem Carpenter ran into with the fog. How do you get a fog to go where you want it to go? how do you
and that's all
direct
lighting.
a fog? How
Yeah.
do you make a pile of silicon move where you want it to go?
Have y'all watched the movies that made us on Netflix? Any of those episodes?
Mm-mm.
There's one on Jurassic Park where it's and it's really heartbreaking because it's Phil Tippett. He was originally signed on to do all the miniatures for the dinosaurs and whatnot, and then I forgot his name, but the guy that came on to do the computer effects basically like did it all on his own and presented it to him and said, look, I can make this look way better than the miniatures. And they're like, fuck yeah, that's awesome. And Phil Tippett was pretty much like just crushed and heartbroken because that basically spelled the end of his era.
There were not a huge amount of CGI shots in the original Jurassic Park.
Yeah, but
I think there were maybe 30
just
all total.
You should watch the episode. It's pretty fucking heartbreaking just to see him realize that his, like, basically saying you're extinct now.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that was the beginning of the end in a way.
Yeah. I mean, everybody puts somebody else out of business,
especially with something that grows like effects does. Because if you're from the old school of special effects, a lot of what was used back then isn't used now. Like we see it in horror because horror, I think, is one that tries to stay in its roots more than like your action films and things like that. So
if there's any movie I can point out that makes a case for using all of it, it is True Lies. And the scene I'm thinking of is the bit with the Harrier jet when Arnold has in the jet and Eliza Dushku is jumping onto the wing. Unless you're paying really close attention, you wouldn't know, but there was a CGI Harrier, a miniature Harrier, and a real Harrier wing. None of them are used from one shot to the next. It always alternates. There's never one used twice in a row, so you never clue into what you're looking at. And it all blends perfectly together. You would never know that you've suddenly jumped from a CGI plane to a miniature plane, back to CGI to an actual plane, and so on and so forth.
I really need to rewatch
Also,
that.
after, Terminator 2, you're not thinking of that as like a CGI-driven film at all. You're thinking, I would think it's practical.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a lot of rear projection going on in that movie, too, that when Arnold picks him up and puts him on the bike, everything behind him is projected on screen. But you wouldn't know that, because it's done right. And they did that a lot.
Yes.
We can all agree that the little brother upgrade was good for the remake. Kind of on the fence about Aggro Blob. I think it looks great. The fact that it made noises, and I don't know. I don't know about that.
I don't remember.
You did, yeah. If I have any serious argument with the remake, it was the origin of the Blob itself. I think making it a government experiment that came back to Earth takes something away from it. You lose that sort of mysterious cosmic aspect of the Blob. It's just unexplainable.
I have a question though.
How in the remake they give it,
but in because it's the remake that has the government experiment coming back to Earth.
Yeah.
But what was political climate like then? What was the government fear mongering based stuff then? Because
was
it could have
definitely
been
a thing of
relevant
the
to that time.
Yeah.
It was an easy out too, because all you had to do to create a villain was just say, "Oh, look, it's the government."
Well, yeah, but I mean, we've seen throughout.
Kind of a trope.
Yeah, but that's the big thing about horror is that it usually is instilled in whatever is going on at that time. Like that's why we have certain things becoming more mainstream or popular during your high-end political times and things like that. So I feel like that they may have leaned into that because of that.
Then it doesn't make the ending work quite as well. Minister ending, not the tag ending. But if you remember, in the remake, they blow up the snowmaking machine, the Blob's frozen, and then it's like, well, We defeated the Blob and the government all in one night, folks. It's Miller
Question
time,
mark.
and that's the end of the
Yeah.
movie.
I mean, that's also kind of how the
Like, you can't be
original did
serious.
too, though.
Well, speaking of the original, though, they had a plan, and if you remember, the plan was put it on a plane and drop it in the Arctic where it will never thaw.
Yeah, the
And
global
I was just
warming.
like, oh my
That
god.
was like I wrote
Who's
that in
gonna
my
tell him?
notes. Like I was like, that's funny because look at where we're at
You can
now.
imagine finding this old retired cop somewhere, and you're like, the Arctic's thawing. What? Shit, the Blob.
Is that how the Beware the Blob starts?
Beware the Blob starts.
Well, according to you, out of focus.
Yeah.
I've never seen that one. But since you brought up
All
The
right.
Fly earlier, I'm going to watch
Have
my
you not
Fly
seen the
box
Fly
set.
remake?
Oh, yeah, I've seen it. I have the box set that been
Oh,
waiting because
yeah,
Ian
yeah.
wants to watch the original. So
Just don't watch the Fly
we're
2.
going to sit down and watch that.
You mean the original? The...
Yeah, the original, the Vincent Price one.
Okay. It's different.
Yeah.
It's not,
It's got-
not at
it's
all
got
like
the first
Cronenberg's
three.
version. Yeah.
It's no, I know. I remember the first one because like him in the fucking web freaked me out as a kid. Like that gave me fucking nightmares. But yeah, it has the first three, and then it has the Cronenberg, and then the what is it, Son of Fly or something like that. Fly 2,
Fly.
Son of Fly. I don't know,
Still
but it's
flying?
a son.
Yeah.
It's Brundle Kid. He's a little Brundle of joy.
Brundle of joy. I love it.
In the remake of the Blob, am I wrong in thinking that kid is the same kid that's in the Return of the Living Dead Part 2? Because that's kind of what that movie reminds me of too, is that you have the government interference. And it was the same year. I think it's the same kid.
Yeah.
Same actor.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Could be.
88. But yeah, he's better in it. Shawnee Smith is pretty damn awesome in it. Whereas if you're the female lead, you're not just like
This is her
dealing
movie.
with the circumstance.
Yeah.
She's like really dealing with the circumstances.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey DeMunn, I love him as the sheriff, but then he gets dispatched pretty quickly. But anyway, Jason was saying he enjoyed the opening of Beware the Blob, and I did too, with Godfrey Cambridge going camping in his house, and Marlena Clark comes home with the...
That's as far as I got into the movie.
Why are they
He's
bewaring the Blob?
scary.
They be wearing the Blob.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, why would they?
Fashionable.
Sorry, I cracked myself up on that
It's
one.
like
Be wearing the
it's like
Blob.
a booger sundress.
I can't
Beware
quit
the Blob.
That is so stupid.
Coco, beware the Blob.
I'd be wearing the Blob.
Katie wins.
I'm sorry. I
Katie
can't.
wins.
All right. So you all were okay with changing the origin of the Blob to government-induced massacre. You're okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
All right.
I like the mysteriousness. I like the
But
mysteriousness.
you
It's
do
a
have
little
Bill
better.
Moseley in the remake.
Huh.
So
He's great. in
without that
everything.
whole
Yeah.
government intervention, you wouldn't have that. So
This is true.
I just feel like you can have both. Like one doesn't have to be better or more successful. That like both work and both are still good films.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a time whenever those remakes were good.
Producer of the original Blob, Jack Harris, refers to the remake as, quote, a nice attempt. And that's about all he had to say about it.
I used to be one of those people that was
You know.
like, oh my god, remakes are the worst thing in the world. They don't take away from the original.
Well, then he
No,
shouldn't
he
have
was
optioned it.
that
If he didn't
or
want a
like,
remake done,
look,
he
I
should not have
love
given them the
Jack
rights
Harris
to do it.
Productions, but
So.
you can't say. I mean, Equinox, Schlock, John Landis's first film. He rode that Blob wave. He did
Mhm.
Beware the Blob. He also did was it Blobbermouth, which was this. It was like
wow, and I thought my be
no,
wearing
they
a
took,
blob
they
was
took
a bad
the original
thing.
and they did a What's Up Tiger
That's-
Lily to it. And they released it on video like a couple years, like in 1990 or something.
Oh, no.
Kind of like the Hideous Sun Demon. They redid that in the 80s as Revenge of the Sun Demon, and
Oh,
Jay
Hover
Leno like voiced the Robert Clark character, I think.
All good ideas. Fantastic ideas. Yeah.
So it was like, dude, there you go. That hilarity.
At least they were at least solid
Hmm.
attempts.
Well, I think one of Jack Harris's quibbles with the remake is that he said he would not have called in the army. His deal was that it was the whole town coming together to fight the Blob, without having this outside force come in and have to help them. Which I kind of get that. It is kind of interesting in the original that we have this group of teenagers, and teenagers were a fairly new concept socially at the time. Before World War II, you dropped out of school in 8th grade and went to work in the factory or went to work on the farm. After World War II, you created this social class, the teenager who could ride around in cars, go to spook shows, and do all that stuff. It was fairly new
Rebels.
to our society. And to have that in the movie, treated as a force of good and not just a bunch of hooligans, was a nice touch. And they did that in the remake also a bit. I mean, there is some pushback, especially from one cop in particular who calls everybody boy. I think he even calls some of the women boy. I don't remember exactly.
He had really bad cataracts. So,
hey, woman boy,
fair.
come here. I thought that the like with the original, just them having the town come together and everything, I thought that was just a product of, well, this is a very small town, and so this is who we have. So this is who we have. That we can't call outside help. There is no outside help. So the fact that in the mid 80s, whenever they're making the remake,
National
that
Guard
was a
troops
thing. You
and-
called for outside help. You got whatever you could do. You had more contact with outside of your town. So it wasn't just the townspeople coming and showing up with, their fire extinguishers to attack the blob.
And that's
It
also
was,
kind of a trope of that era,
everybody
because
else.
you saw a lot of those horror films that had that same type of formula. And whenever I see the blob, I think of the giant Gila monster.
Sure.
Like it has that whole same teeny bopper who's a buddy with the local cops. You're like, what? That was a thing back then? And there's a little kid in it, and the whole town has to come together and defeat this menace,
I liked the between, what is his name, Dave and Steve.
Yeah.
Dave was the sheriff. I liked their back and forth. I liked their relationship. I thought that was nice because it wasn't too over the top. It wasn't too unbelievable. I mean, the only really rough part was Steve McQueen being 28 playing a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
That was weird. That was weird. He's at that lookout point in the beginning of the
Steve
movie.
McQueen
and I'm
was
like,
sort
why is
of.
she
I
here
think
with her
Steve
uncle?
McQueen might have been born looking 30 years old.
Yeah, he was tough looking from the get-go.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there's plenty of 28-year-olds.
Do you
want to
know what it made me think of?
Look, but...
This is just stick with me.
No.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
No, but when they're like, oh my God, it's these type of fire extinguishers.
Oh.
Let's all go get all these fire extinguishers. It made me think of the movie Evolution when they realize it's the shampoo, and then everybody goes and gets the shampoo to defeat the alien. That's what it made me think of.
I liked how the girl's father, what was her name? Jane's father, he even got
I know where you
his-
can find 20 of those.
Yeah, he's got his story
You mean
arc. He's
Janie
got,
Girl?
he has his story concludes with, look, I can be a badass too and throw a rock through a window. And I'm
For
going to
some
break
reason,
the rules,
remember
kids.
this. Most of this movie takes place around midnight, so apparently everybody sleeps in a suit.
In a
I
suit,
mean,
yeah, when they went to the
does
police
this guy,
station
like,
to pick
not
up
get
their
up to-
kids,
Yeah.
I'm like, why the hell are they just in suits at midnight?
That's like Rebel Without a Cause, too.
Wait, speaking of that, like, how about the elderly couple? Whenever the guy gets up and puts on his army helmet,
civil defense hat.
Yeah.
And the,
and then the
He has a
fireman,
civil defense
he's like,
hat
well,
and
what
the
the hell am
fire
I
hat,
supposed to
and he's like,
wear?
What
Trying
do
to
I
figure
wear?
out what the alarm was that was going
so
off.
great. Yeah, it was great. Like that was a wonderful bit. I loved that.
Mhm.
That made me smile really big. And then did I miss something, or were there like at one point somebody said that the blob has already killed 40 to 50 people?
Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah,
remember.
there-
seeing
Bob was
that
busy
many
off
people.
camera.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I just didn't know if was that
Maybe
a time
that's
that
what the
I was
remake
looking
makes up
away
for.
2 seconds, or
40 to 50
Yeah.
would have been easily half the town.
Well,
at
can
that
I have a
point.
question? In blob science, can the blob only grow when it's consuming people? Like, does he
think so.
I
maintain
think
his
so. Or
size
consuming things.
unless he
Math.
consumes a person? Because that would make sense
Like,
why
does
they
it
need
shrink
to
down if it doesn't
acknowledge
eat?
that he consumed, because he was bigger by the time
Yeah.
it got. So it
Yeah.
would make sense that they needed to acknowledge that he consumed people.
Right.
That was
I
my thought.
suppose.
I like that idea though. If he doesn't, if the blob
Yeah.
doesn't eat, does it shrink back down to normal?
I feel like it
Like
would just
if it
maintain.
starts to starve.
Well,
or
that
does
would
it- yeah.
that would that would
It
beg the
maintains.
question of, does he poop? Because then he would shrink down. Because as long as he is holding in that matter, I think, or that mass, he would
I like
stay
how
that
you've assigned a
size.
gender to the blob.
Well, he's destructive.
Does the blob poop?
I feel like we're all reacting to different
We're-
things
Nathan-
right now.
Nathan, were any of the... I didn't watch the whole movie, so I don't know. Were any of these questions answered in Beware the Blob about his various gender fluidity or pooping abilities of the blob?
But do you get what
no.
I'm saying, though? If
No,
the
not that you remember?
blob
Well, you
doesn't-
think Beware the Blob is shit, so maybe there's science in that. But you think that whole movie's a turd. I don't know.
Something else I noticed. I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but in neither the original or the remake, they never used the word blob. Ever.
It's a
It was
monster.
infuriating. They get to it. It's to the point where they're even asking Steve McQueen, "What did you see?" And he's like, "Well, it's kind of a, it's like a," and I'm just screaming at the screen, "It's a blob! Fuck's sake, just call it the blob!" But they never do it.
It's like
Not
in
either
either version
Wait,
of
have
the
you
thing.
seen
Do they address it as the thing?
Huh?
Sorry, Nathan
What
was
happened?
saying something important.
What?
I was saying something
He
stupid.
said, "Have you
I don't
seen
know.
Frankenstein?"
Yes.
Answer
Next.
it.
I was just saying. I was saying that, like, as Steve McQueen in the movie, whenever he's trying to explain what the blob looks like, because you're like infuriated with him, monster, and I'm just like, have you seen Frankenstein? He looks kind of like that, only melted. But then Nathan said something, and I just automatically assumed whatever Nathan was going to say was infinitely smarter and more relevant than what I was saying. So I was trying to give him the floor.
Did you say
And I'm not being
infinitely or
sarcastic.
infantly? Because it could go either way. No.
I
Maybe
will
comments.
take either way.
No, I was just saying, do they address the thing in either version as the thing?
No.
Did they ever say like, "Hey, thing"?
No,
Knock that
like if
off.
there's
No,
a
I don't think
is
they
there a
did.
scene where they're describing like is you know,
It's a
like
thing.
that thing killed this, you know, or whatever.
Huh.
I can't remember if there are
Okay.
any moments like that, but
Was
I
he
don't
wearing
think
any
they
pants?
did.
I don't
It's
know. I
sort of
didn't
like-
see a thing.
It doesn't bother me that he doesn't call it a blob.
Well, I mean, it's not like in Near Dark where they never use the word vampire. This is clearly a
But is it one of
a
those things
blob
where the
structure.
movie acknowledges the name of the title of the film in the movie, where
Well-
it's like, what is it? And he turns to the camera.
Hmm.
It's the Blob.
well, it is a good point to mention the shooting title was The Molten Meteor. It wasn't The Blob.
Right.
So that was obviously like an afterthought. Again, he doesn't
Okay.
describe it as a molten meteor.
Why couldn't he just say
but-
gooey mass? Was that not relevant terminology back then? Like he doesn't say like it's a gloopy mass, or he doesn't like like he has the hardest time describing something that is just a booger.
Well, I think that
Like
that
he
is
doesn't
supposed
say
to
it's a
convey
fleshy
the
looking
fear.
booger.
Well, to me, it's supposed to convey the fear. If he can't put into words what he's trying to see, then or what he's seeing, then it kind of shows like
sorry, just
But he's
a giant booger ate Doc.
if he was trying to do that, he wasn't. It didn't sell it as that to me. Like he didn't seem like he was that scared. He was just.
well, I mean, the acting isn't that great in this film.
Well, I mean,
Why,
but there are
yeah.
some good spots in it. I like.
There
I thought
are. I
Steve
don't
McQueen
deny
did good.
that.
And the lady that played Jane, I can't remember her name.
Oh,
But I looked her up because I was like, hey, she's good. What else did she do?
Annetta Corso.
Yeah. And
Toolbox Murders.
Yeah.
Toolbox Murders and loads of television. Only feature credit I think that I could think of was Toolbox Murders.
Toolbox Murders was 20 years after The Blob, so
yeah.
he was good.
Robert Fields, who played Tony in this movie, was also in a lot of good stuff like Frankenstein Meets the Space
Yeah.
Monster, Stepford Wives, Looking for Mr. Goodbar, Star 80, American Strays. Steve McQueen was, of course, in a few movies.
Never so few, you could even
you
say.
can think of.
So earlier, Katie mentioned when she mentioned the midnight movie thing,
Yeah.
and I've always kind of taken issue with this. It's like, why did they even go to the trouble? But when they're outside the theater, you see that mock-up poster, that Forbidden Planet poster that's repurposed as The Vampire and the Robot, starring Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
And you're like, right,
doesn't
right.
exist.
But Daughter of Horror, it does exist, and that's the movie they're watching. And that was
I want to see that movie.
is
Mhm.
repurposed from Dementia.
Daughter of Horror.
Jack Harris bought that, and then they restructured it and got Ed McMahon to do narration. And that's the movie they're watching. But at any rate, I just thought, like, when I see that Forbidden Planet poster, that was, 2 years before? Like, who are they fooling with that? Because Forbidden Planet was such a huge hit.
Know.
Well, probably anybody but you, Nathan.
Yeah.
Couldn't
But-
just be a nod, though?
Did the fake movie they had in the remake have a name?
Can't remember.
I don't know if it did.
Blobula. He had fangs.
Ooh.
That was a nice touch. I mean, that was kind of funny when he's like menacing them with like a hedge trimmer. Hockey season ended months ago.
But anyway, that poster just reminded me.
I kept wondering why they did that too, because I kept thinking that's not a real movie. What? At first glance, I thought it was the poster for Robot Monster, but that wasn't.
No.
Because it kind of had. I didn't look at it that closely.
Which would have been more passable because that wasn't as widely known. It reminded me of my favorite example of repurposing a movie poster for the sake of teasing another movie is Mark Pirro doing a Polish vampire in Burbank. In that movie, they go to see Enema Vampires, a movie by Corman Rogers, and they take the poster for Fort Apache the Bronx and literally put blood on Ed Asner and Ken Wall's face and Paul Newman. Or actually, they put another picture over Paul Newman just so he's not as recognizable. But yeah, they just whiten the faces and put blood dripping and fangs. I was like, that's brilliant.
That's
I just had to
fantastic.
mention that. Did anybody else watch the Goosebumps episode, The Blob That Ate Everyone, in preparation for this, just for the hell of it?
I didn't.
But I did purchase this copy of Fanny Hill on VHS for $1.
Ooh, Paragon Video Productions. Nice. Have you watched it yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, let me see the gate on that tape. Is it a Fuji, like the beige gate?
No.
Jason is so done.
Okay. What's the year? 82? Does it say 82 that it was produced?
Fucking nerd. No, it looks like
If it's
maybe
82, it's a
85.
good chance you're going to have some awesome trailers on there.
Uh-oh.
Just saying.
Any final thoughts on The Blob? Is it one of your new favorite movies ever?
Yeah, let's hear from both of you. No?
No.
Wow.
I wouldn't
Damn.
watch it again.
I would watch the remake again, but I
It's
probably
a
would
great
never
late
watch
night
this again.
movie, though.
Yeah,
It
fair
is a
enough.
Watch
great
the remake.
movie to like. Yeah.
It's a good movie. I can see why it has its place in the zeitgeist that it does, but
Agreed.
just not for me.
Something you'll watch every once in a while, maybe.
No.
Nope.
Oh,
I'm a
wow.
one and done
Okay.
on this one, I think.
Was it your first
Can
Steve
you repeat
McQueen
that?
movie or no?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say probably,
Okay.
but I don't know
It was mine, I
because
believe.
I don't know if I've ever seen anything else.
Like
he's been
Bullet,
in.
Thomas Crown Affair, Towering Inferno,
I've not
Tom
seen any
Horn.
of those.
Papillon, arguably his best film.
Papillon 2,
I like
still
a
Papillon.
song called that.
Before that was also remade, by the way, but whatever.
Yeah.
There's a remake of Papillon.
Yeah, Rami Malek's in it.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
came and went.
I do
Nobody
like him.
cared. It was like,
I'm one and done on the Blob. Like, it was fine. It's nothing that I would go back to. With the remake available, I'd probably rather watch that. It's visually more appealing to me. I'm one of the few of us that likes the aggro Blob.
Okay.
That one is more fun to me to watch, even if it's just in the background. This one felt like there was about 20% missing from it. It felt like it was rushed.
that's
It
the
didn't
50
feel-
people it was devouring off screen.
Probably. Like, if we got that, then we might be talking about a second viewing here. But
It's actually,
as it stands, you don't give me that massacre.
it's pretty lengthy for a horror film of the time, though. It's like 82 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Most of them were like 74 around that time. So,
60 of those minutes was that opening song.
hey, wait a minute.
I like the opening song.
I know you do.
I would listen to the song again.
It creeps, it bleeps, it sleeps, it treeps, it breeps. I'm making up words.
I
Okay.
probably would.
Well, on that stunning revelation, I do think it's time to end. So thank you all for listening to the show.
Welcome.
We'll see you next
No.
time.
Thank you for feeling this show.
The show is over. So once again we must say goodbye. Thank you for listening. The Smooth Thrills Radio Hour is a production of Ghostcraft and is recorded live in Dallas, Texas. Please email your questions and comments to autopilot at smoochthrillsradiohour.com. Enjoy the rest of your day. Kisses.
This has been a Ghostcraft presentation.